What is up, everyone? It is time for another Discovering Starfinder episode, and today we're finally diving into the Pact Worlds book. If you've followed along the previous episodes, we were working our way through the core rulebook, learning about Starfinder. I'm a first-time Starfinder player, so there was a lot of lore for me to learn and a lot of lore for me to dive into. And we finished that book up, and we have since started our actual play series. We're a few episodes in now. We started with the incident at Absalom Station, which is the very first of the adventure paths from Paizo in the Starfinder world and universe. So we've been continuing to dive into Absalom Station, the races, the classes, the lore, and everything else surrounding that. We started with the very first adventure that they ever put out. And all that being said, it's now time for me to dive into the actual Pact Worlds book and start to uncover and discover everything about the universe surrounding Starfinder. And this is a much deeper dive into all the various worlds and cultures of the Pact Worlds throughout this book. I have the PDF we're going to be going through today. This is a sort of a deep dive into the various worlds that are located throughout space. We're going to talk a little bit about the lore and stuff. As always, with these episodes, if you've never watched one of these, I'm not an expert on Starfinder, so I'm a newbie to a lot of this stuff. So I ask a lot of questions as I go along. And what I'm looking for is people out there like you who might be experts on Starfinder, who know a lot more than I do, who have resources or more information that they might want to add to the equation to help me better understand Starfinder and to help people out there who might be new to the Starfinder universe to learn more as well. So that being said, welcome if you are here for the first time. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update in this series and beyond. Keep an eye out for our actual play series and all the other things that happen here on the channel. Without further ado, let's go ahead and dive in. So first up, you got to love the artwork as we get into the worlds of the Pact Worlds. I just really like the way they've got the artwork set up for this game. It's really tasty. I like it. It's a lot different than the fantasy stuff they do for Pathfinder. But moving in, we are now starting with the sun, which was strange because I didn't realize that the sun was actually a livable place. But it says here that the sun is not only a livable place, but that it has something on it called the Burning Archipelago, which is really intriguing to me, especially considering it says that the Serenites who located these structures over a century ago, it says protective tunnels in the plasma fire opened miraculously, revealing abandoned buildings within. So no one knows where they came from, and it says that the heat and everything else, it's like everyone wants to know what's allowing this to be a livable space, but it's not known, and people are like, it's mystical, it's magical, we really don't know why. Not only that, but these tunnels that just miraculously, the word they use in the Pact Worlds book is protective tunnels in the plasma fire opened miraculously. That's the word they used. Very interesting. Says here that the Burning Archipelago is more stable in its surroundings, consisting of force bubbles of various size, with cities or large platforms suspended within. Here's the part where it says unknown mechanisms, which many believe to be powered by magic, maintain a habitable temperature and atmosphere within the bubbles while deflecting the constant solar radiation. That's fascinating to me because no one knows what these bubbles were formed by, what or who were formed them. It says the best minds of the Pact Worlds have thrown themselves into attempting to understand how the Burning Archipelago functions, mainly in the case of the bubbles, in case the bubbles ever begin to break down, but to no avail. It says incidental knowledge gleaned from the research has paid dividends in technological achievements from advanced materials able to withstand proximity to the sun to more efficient solar sails. Cool. There is names for the bubbles apparently, the largest and most connected being known as Dawnshore. Says it is the stronghold of the Serenites who were the first people here to explore things. Then there's Corona, Selicuna, Fireside, Verdeon. Cool. The most used entrance to the archipelago is through a narrow tunnel of reduced solar energy, which appears magically, when a vessel approaches the appropriate area of the sun. The tunnel leads to and seems to emanate from Dawnshore, making that the bubble to the archipelago space. So it seems to me like there's a ton of magic going on here, and the fact that no one knows what it comes from or how to explain it. This kind of goes back to the questions I had about the gap, and how like the gap just happened and no one knows anything about it. The gods don't want to talk about it. It's like just this thing, right? I'm okay with that as a MacGuffin, like a mystical thing that no one knows about, here and there. But as long as it's not an overused MacGuffin, considering we've seen it for the gap and now we've seen it for this, it's just something that no one can explain. I'll give it a pass, a second time around, but I would love there to be an actual reason for this and for us to uncover what the reason is as opposed to just, well, no one knows why. It's a mystery. Next up is Aballon, a rocky metallic world. It says it whips around the sun at incredible speeds, and it says ages ago, a mysterious race called the First Ones seeded Aballon with a host of machines. The First Ones departed so long ago that most non-Aballonians have forgotten their existence and consider the myriad models of Aballonian robots, now known as Anacytes, to be the true species of the planet. It says here that the planet has played several major roles in post-gap history in the Galarian system. Says this was the most important contribution was the constructed deity Epoch, who eventually combined with two other ascended artificial intelligence to become Triune, the god that gave the drift to the universe. Many think Aballon's contributions would decrease in the aftermath of its created deity's ascendance, but the revelation drift only furthered Aballon's reverence in the Galarian system, as the Aballon-based Church of Triune uses facilities on the planet to forge the early drift engines. Okay, today Aballon is a key contributor to the prosperity and protection of Pact Worlds. Okay, so this is a planet of robots, essentially. It says explorers can acquire permits to venture into the cities of the First Ones, while other adventurers might join corporation-funded expeditions to uncover relics in the jungles of the ice wells. It says natives and visitors alike eventually become embroiled in the ever-growing political movement to spread acceptance of constructs and other sentient technological creatures of the galaxy. Okay, so this is a planet of robots, essentially intelligent machine creatures, and gave rise to at least one of, it doesn't say the other two, but it gave rise to at least one of the deities that make up the Triune. Where do the other two come from, by the way? I don't know enough about this. Says there are no oceans on the surface of Aballon, although there's frozen water here. Says from an outsider's view, the planet is a dull world of iron and rock, with expansions of city nations. So is this kind of like Coruscant in a sense? No, because it says here that when viewed from orbit, one can clearly see open landscapes left between the Anacyte-built megaplexes and the cities of the First One. And there's a ton of impact craters from stellar debris and other objects. Okay. It says the modern terrain is not really prone to change. It says it's only suffered minor shifting in the past 10,000 years. Okay. Residents. When the First Ones came to Aballon to harvest it for unknown matter, they left behind a race of self-improving constructs known as the Anacytes. Okay. Androids are the second largest population on Aballon. Oh, so what's the difference between Anacytes and androids? Anacytes are self-improving constructs. Are androids, is the difference is that androids are made by humans or other peoples? Don't know enough about that. Love to hear somebody drop the explanation to that below, because I don't understand what's the difference between an anacyte and an android. Next up is Castrovel, a hot human world with a rich atmosphere that gives life to continent-spanning jungles, home to dinosaurs. Essentially, it sounds like. It says despite the fact that there are terrestrial biomes here, the planet remains thoroughly wild despite populated settlements, modern cities, and industrial complexes. So it's divided into 4 major continents. It's the homeland of the Shuntas, as Santa is the largest continent of Castrovel, with everything from snow-capped mountains and sweltering jungles to rocky and rain-shadowed deserts. Its coastlines are for the most part mapped and understood, while records of the interior are confined to myth and broken history. Then there's the ant-like Formians. Then there's the elves, who live on Soverian. Okay, it says here they've been set apart from Castrovel's other cultures by icebergs and frost cyclones of the snow salt sea, and the vicious sea whales and ship-breaking comohumes of the Sea of Teeth. That sounds cool. It says each of Castrovel's 3 great species has a continent to call its own. Few records suggest any large-scale colonization of the continent known as Ukulam, which is the 4th, and it's an unconquered place. It says here has remained the domain of deadly plants, immense fungi, and powerful dinosaur beasts. Yeah. Never-ending cycle of evolution, death, and decay. This inexorable process has ultimately consumed settlements, leaving most ruins. So, by the way, as someone who lives in the tropics, the jungle comes quick, especially if you're dealing with a place that's going to be influenced by magic as well and enhanced by magic. Because where we live, I mean, when we put up that, we've documented this over on our homestead website, our homestead YouTube channel, I should say. We cordoned off a section of the yard with chicken wire, just keep the chickens out of it, to set up a garden. And it only took 2 months, and it was completely covered in vegetation in 2 months. And give it 6 months, and it would have overgrown like the grill and everything else we have out there. I mean, it grows quick in the tropic environments. Crazy stuff. Castrovel's extreme biodiversity. It's unsurprising that the planet has fostered several major races. Most prominent, of course, are the Lashuntas, or these telepathic humanoids, and then the ant-like and equally telepathic Formians, which are not a playable race, I don't think. As far as I don't remember seeing those in the core rulebook. And then the elves, who remain steadfastly aloof from conflict and everything else, focusing on magical pursuits and guarding their shores with stony resolve. It says relations between the 3 primary races are not as fractious as they seem. Outposts of all 3 can be found on the borders of their native continents, and the planet as a whole welcomes travelers. It's really interesting to think about a planet that has, 3 major races. It says there's also a plant-like telepathic humanoid called Kaisar, who inhabit the jungles of Ukulam, but they're migratory. And they when talked about, they say they don't want to put too much ecological strain on only one area, but also enjoy the change of scenery. It's a good way to look at it. Oh, this is one we're familiar with. Absalom Station. Yeah, this is a place we know and love because we're actually playing through this with Incident at Absalom Station in our playthrough right now. So I'm always happy to read more about Absalom Stations. I think it's a fascinating place because I view it with the same, coming into it like Babylon 5 or Deep Space Nine. I have an affinity for those shows, and I love the idea of a space station. Like I talked about this before we started the Absalom Station module. When I was first wanting to get into Starfinder, I was thinking that maybe I should just run a homebrew set in on Absalom Station. But then at the end of the day, I was like, you know what? To get up to speed on the system and learn the rules and everything else, it would be better if I did my own mod, doing one of the official modules as opposed to a homebrew. That way, I don't have to stress about getting it right. But this is the kind of stuff that is going to inform me because I may decide that we just go into a homebrew after this or we do something different. Because there's a lot of stories you could write on a space station. I think it's a pretty cool place to think about. This is the metaphorical center of the Pact Worlds, the hub around which all things revolve. And it is here that the Pact Worlds were formally created as an entity via the Absalom Pact. And it says here that it remains the system's heart, culturally, economically, and governmentally. All sentient species are welcome in the streets, with, of course, the mysterious artifact at the heart acting as a singular, powerful hyperspace beacon. No one knows who built Absalom Station, and I have so many questions about the gap. It seems interesting to me that no one has found anything out since then. It says here, its population are historically Galarian-based species with its position in the precise orbit vacated by Galarians, suggests that Galarian natives are responsible for the vast undertaking, but no one knows more. Records show that when the gap ended, the station seemed lived in and worn, implying that the residents had been there for quite some time. So that's this kind of stuff that it's the MacGuffin, but it also, I don't want it to be overused, like mysterious circumstances. Absalom Station is huge. Obviously, it is a giant space station. Looks like a six-pointed star spreading out in a flat plane when viewed from above. But the cool thing here for me is like when you read through the core rulebook, you get a brief explanation of all of these worlds and everything else. But coming into this book with the Pact Worlds, you get these breakdowns, these deep explanations. So learning about the residents and the society, the current prime executive, Kumara Melacruz, only halfway through her current term. Population 2,130,000, made up of 46% human, 9% android, 9% Isoki, 7% Lashunta, 5% Sharon, 4% dwarf, 4% halfling, 4% Kasatha, 3% Vest, 2% gnome, 1% Noir, 6% other. With a government council led by Prime Executive Camaro Cruz from the Sindus Guild. Maximum item level 20th. Then we have all the various sections, which essentially act as, I don't want to say continents, but I love the breakdown map they give here of Absalom Station. By the way, there's maps throughout here. I haven't been showing all these because, I'm trying to keep this to just me talking. I think it's okay to talk about artwork for the purpose of discussing it and analyzing it. But of course, we want to keep most of that stuff respected in the book so that people will actually go out there and purchase the book as opposed to seeing it out there on the internet. Most of these images you can find on the internet, which makes them available for fair use, which is why I can show them. Anyway, I love everything about Absalom Station. I think for me, if I don't feel the need to travel to other planets to have a good time in Starfinder so far. I'm very happy with being on Absalom Station with the campaign that we're running, and even beyond that, I think having a campaign set on the station would be a lot of fun. There's enough diversity on the station to have it be, your primary hub, and then if you want to do adventures out from there, you have your ship. And maybe you operate like like the Firefly crew, and you go out and do missions. But then you come home, once a month, once every 3 months or whatever, living on your ship from time to time. But then you come back and you have some apartments set up. Really cool stuff. Hey everyone, Renfail here with the commercial part of the video where I say, hey, if you like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you never miss an update. And thanks to all of our supporters here on YouTube and over on Patreon, our highest members, our guild champions, Crazy's Relative, Remy D here on YouTube. And don't forget, if you want to support, it's really easy. You can do the memberships below, the Adventurers Guild, 3 different tiers. There's also the super thanks on any uploaded video or YouTube short that you find. There's also, of course, the super chats and stickers that you could do on any live stream or premiere, and the Patreon page if you want to dive into the fantasy world that I have with my brother and my wife, which is a tabletop game, a point-and-click adventure game, and a fantasy book series. All are great ways to keep this channel going and me going full-time. Thanks again for those of you who support. Let's get back to the video that you're watching now. Next up is Akiton. Says a rocky surface filled with grisly impact scars and forbidding ice caps. Says even despite all of this, life has clung to the surface for untold eons. The core is cooled, atmosphere is thin, liquid water has frozen, killing off most of the plant life. What might have been a lush paradise is now a desert world. Okay. The rise of space travel, it said, not the risk of. The rise of space travel brought new life to Akiton. Oh, so within this planet is Thasteron, which it says here is a substance key to the production of starship fuel for sublight travel. So there's a boom here after the advent of drift travel. Oh, no, hang on. I'm reading this better. With the advent of drift travel shortly after the gap, the need for Thasteron quickly plateaued and then plummeted. And within mere decades, most operations' cost of extracting the material outweighed the profits, and today only a handful of reserves are still excavated. Are there any people on Akiton? It said here that for every crater on Akiton, there are at least a dozen wrecks. although it says scavengers have yet to identify and much less loot. All of the wrecks, which hark back to a time when Akiton was richer and the Pact Worlds less peaceful. Ooh, it says here, archaeological investigation indicates that most of the wrecks crashed in approximately the same date at some point during the gap, suggesting an extraordinary battle for dominance of the planet. But during the gap, that's that period that no one has any memory of. Fascinating. So there's no people, there's like no actual native people here. It's just a place that people came to mine for resources. There was a huge battle here at some point that no one knows anything about. That's a map. The Diao Rift. Okay. The reason I'm looking like this is because the map is presented in that format. All right. Oh, wait, there are native people here. Ashoks? Native contemplatives are often referred to as the contemplatives of Ashok. Next up is Verces. Is it Verces or Verces? I'm going to say Verces. Verces. It says it orbits the sun between Akiton and the Idari. What is the Idari? It's in italics, I should say. So is that like a spaceship or something? It says Verces is a highly civilized world at the forefront of social and technological progresses. Tidally locked with the same side always facing the sun, it lacks a day-night cycle. Instead of having a side known as Fulbright, another side known as Dark Side. Interesting. Says it has a native population known as the Verthani, who are humanoids. It's hospitable to most of the major Pact World races, with a gravity and atmosphere similar to that of Absalom Station, Castrovel, and Triaxus. Most of its citizens, both native-born and immigrants, live in the ring of nations that circle the planet along the Terminator where night and day meet. Relaxing in sky gardens. So that's kind of interesting. It says over half of the planet is dry land because the Fulbright side lacks any water, although local legends speak of ancient seas. Dark side, by contrast, contains most of the planet's water and is full of half-frozen seas such as the God's Water and glaciers whose boundaries are obscured by snow and ice. Very interesting. Okay. Verthani are 8 feet tall humanoids with protruding mouse-like black skin, black eyes, and skin colors that can be shifted at will to display complex patterns. Ooh. Humans are common on Verces. Oh wow, it says here the temperate portion is composed of 27 different countries, most of them roughly rectangular, as environs define their eastern and western borders, known as the Ring of Nations. Okay. Oh, it says here that when Shirans originally arrived in the Pact Worlds, Verces was the first planet to offer them asylum. It says in what may have been either a miscommunication or simple Shiran literalism, the Shirans named this initial colony Sanctuary, spreading out from there across the Tamora Desert to a series of satellite colonies. You know, the more I know about the Shiran, I find them less like cockroaches and more like the prawns that are. They're not called. I don't remember what they're called in District 9, but you know what I mean. The aliens in that film. Idari. Oh, okay. This is where it's explaining to me what this is. It says the only ship to be recognized as an actual world. It serves the de facto home of the Kasathas in this region of space. It says it was launched from the desert planet of Kasath shortly after the gap. It was a colony ship originally intended to establish a new home on Akiton, but when they arrived in the system, they saw that Akiton was already bustling with life and decided to place their ship in orbit between Verces and the Diaspora as a world in its own right. It says the ship has seen many generations die and be born, and will most likely see a multitude more. Okay. It says it is a world inside a vast starship around the rotation of a central cylinder called the Drum, which is approximately 2.5 miles long, half a mile in diameter. Reminds me kind of like the Mormon ship in The Expanse that they showed in the TV show. a massive, massive, massive colony ship. Surface area is just under 4 square miles, with urban centers. Tires rose into the center. Okay. There are forests, grasslands, and riparian biomes in the central portion of the drum, harkening back to the Kaseth's desert oases. And at the end of the drum, the floor rises up to create lower slopes known as the fore Kaseth and aft Kaseth, which simulate the drier portions of the ecosystem from the planet. And then the slopes become cliffs. There's also 3 major bodies of water in the drum: Sternward Reservoir, Foreshore, and the Lake of Memories. It says it's left untouched except for the Pillar of the Homeworld, which serves as a visual reminder of what was left behind. Also, the lower lakes are the favorite rural retreat of the Kaseth, lightly forested and with numerous smaller lakes, and the lower lakes are tame country, full of trails and discreet amenities. Hiking, yay! Okay. It's 93% Kasatha and 7% other. Does anyone know what happened to their original planet? Did it say and I missed it? Launched from the desert planet of Kaseth shortly after the gap ended. But does it say somewhere what happened to their planet? That's what I would want to know. Like, what caused them to send a colony ship out? All right, and we now have the Diaspora, which says here is a geographically diverse region of space marked by millions of asteroids. It says the majority is formed from the debris of 2 planets called Damiar and Iovo, which were destroyed in the primordial time prior to the gap. Little is known of the geographical makeup of these twin worlds, but their geology is apparent by researching the composition of the local planetary debris. It says many of the planetoids here are barren rocks with no atmosphere. Others have self-contained biospheres maintained permanently by the Sarcesians, but also contain artificial habitats such as dwarven space stations and mining colonies. The Diaspora is rife with supernatural phenomena that defy scientific categorization. Planar fissures. Ooh, not cool. Despite the asteroid's field's diverse and eclectic inhabitants, only 8% of all planets in the Diaspora are known to be inhabited, leaving vast stretches unpopulated and unexplored. I'm thinking of the expanse that I mentioned earlier and just thinking of the builders. The dominant residents are Sarcesians, who claim to be descended from the native inhabitants of the planets. So some dispute this claim, but it says remnants of ruins from the twin worlds found scattered throughout clearly exhibit the presence of their cultural lending credibility to their assertion of origin. Something here called the Free Captains, a collective of pirates and smugglers, make up a major group here outside of the Sarcesians. It says free captains can be found operating through the sport, but their power center is the secret asteroid fortress called Broken Rock. Oh, that sounds cool. So we have our own pirate refuge. It says see page 82. Well, we're on page 79 right now, so we're about to get to that part real quick. Okay. Ooh, I like the artwork for the... That's cool. Very cool. All right, 82, 82, 82. We're on page 81. 82. Broken Rock, known as the stronghold of the Free Captains. Broken Rock is a 450-mile wide asteroid with a large... I don't care about the location. Space pirates discovered. Oh. So it was colonized and discovered at some point during the gap and has grown over the centuries. Since then, it remains a haven for free captains and their crews, offering merchants who purchase their illicit goods, mechanics who can repair their starships, and gambling halls where they can throw away their credits. Only free captains and those they vouch for know the exact location of Broken Rock, and in an event of attack, an array of automated capital laser weapons and collectively as broadsides defend the asteroid. Ooh, this is also where the Pirate Council meets. It says to discuss matters of importance, occasionally modify the free captain's pirate code. So if you were going to be a space pirate, this is where you would want to be based. Really cool. Next up, we have Eox. And the only reason I know of Eox right off the bat is because the next part of the incident at Absalom Station that we're about to get to, which I think is part 2, because we have finished up part 1, which is the initial investigation of the groups that attacked the landing dock and killed Durval Creel, our dwarven contact for the Starfinder Society. The next part of this, I was reading through it because as the DM, I have to get up to speed on things. Actually, we're meeting someone who's a representative of this planet, so I kind of already at least knew of it. It says Eox is among the most mysterious of the Pact Worlds, and probably the most feared. It says here because it's a dead world killed long before the gap in what is believed to have been fallout from an interplanetary war. And most of Eox's inhabitants are undead, with most powerful being the Bone Sages. Centuries-old masters of magic and technology brook no interference with their plans, but they carefully keep their experiments and long-term schemes within the bounds of what the Absalom Pact permits member worlds to perform on their own territories. Or it says here, at least no outsiders have proven otherwise. Says it was probably a verdant planet at one point with an ecosystem. It's nothing more than a charred husk now with a poisonous atmosphere filled with radiation. There's no seas. An area called Resembrance Rock serving as a monument of all the Eox lost. Then there's the Atraskian Shelf, remnant of what used to be the continent of Atraskia. Okay. Diminius Hollow. There's a continent-sized crater known as the Fakinora Basin. Cuts close to the core of the planet. Wow, that's scary. Says it's even dangerous to those of Eox, and most residents give it a wide berth, with a series of mountains around the edge called the Fringe. Okay. It says some of Eox's original living inhabitants, the Elebrians, survived the cataclysm in sealed underground bunkers, but the devastation planet-side made it impossible for them to continue their old way of life. They decided to turn themselves and most of their population into undead beings. Does it say how they did this? These spellcasters were the first bone sages, and many continued to rule the planet, so they've been alive since then. It says, however, a small population of living Elebrians still exists. Considered as second-class citizens, they're relegated to settlements with breathable artificial atmospheres and radiation shielding. It says, though relatively small, the largest contingent of them can be found in the Halls of the Living, which is an underground city. Oh, that's unfortunate. It says it acts as a backdrop for various cruel shows broadcast for the rest of the planet's amusement. That's unfortunate. Oh, that's creepy. Bone Sages. And there's the internal convocation. Ghouls and more. Oof. Not a fan. I don't think I would ever want to go there. Like, why? Seriously though, that just sounds like a not a fun place. I also never wanted to play the undead in World of Warcraft. Like, I just don't care for the undead type stuff. Like, doesn't appeal to me. Triaxus. I see a big dragon on this piece of artwork. I need to know more. Why are there dragons on Triaxus? It says more than any other celestial body in the Pact Worlds, Triaxus is a place of extremes. It has a very slow path that's eccentric as well around the sun, mires this world in centuries-long winters and summers that define existence for all life upon it. So okay, wow. So the centuries-long winters. That's an amazing concept, actually. Okay, so enormous glaciers form, creeping 1,000 miles or more from the poles, with summers that are full of sweltering heat that envelops the planet. Fire and drought become deadly threats eventually after the jungles and forests bloom. It says that strangely, the transitional seasons, spring and fall, only last as long as it takes for the summer vegetation to grow or fall dormant, respectively. That's pretty quick. It says life on the planet is hardy, and the organisms have adapted according to the different climates. It says each main season's flora and fauna enter a state of hibernation as their time draws to a close. That's interesting. Some of the human inhabitants experience vast shifts in biology depending on the season during which they are born. Okay. Okay. There are species here. The Rhyphorians, whose life cycle and adaptability resemble humans. Then there's dragonkin and dragons, who weather the seasons by taking precautions and making lifestyle changes as necessary. Ooh, that's really cool. It says long before the gap, there was a conflict between the dragons and Rhyphorians, who dominated the entire planet, with dragonkin fighting on both sides of the equation. However, as Triaxus' residents developed spaceflight, territorial wars became moot, especially after the gap and the signing of the Pact. It says evil dragons still treat their humanoid vessels with disdain. It says they're left over with their schemes and plans, preferring to meddle behind the scenes in interstellar politics and hoarding information as well as riches. All right, next up is Liavara. This is one of two massive gas giants in the Pact World system. Liavara is known for its peach-colored skies, extensive dust ring, and countless shepherd moons. It does not hold full Pact World membership. It says the neighboring world of Bretheda administers Liavara as a refuge for the planet's most notable species, the Barathu-like dreamers. No terrestrial surface or solid core. Okay. The dust rings are more distinctive. Many of the shepherd moons bear unexplained marks of ancient civilizations, like abandoned mines, obelisks covered in eldritch ruin markings, and even lavish tombs. The only true settlement on Liavara is the floating city of Roselight, which is a series of transparent aluminum and polycarbonate domes atop a mechanical thruster platform. Who built it? The Brethedan administration ensures that Roselight remains a specific point in the planet's atmosphere, so Barathu overseers can monitor traffic and activity to the mining corporations operating within the strict limitations of the planet. And then there's a place an artificial satellite called Upwell in a fixed orbit, which serves as a main point of entry. It says Liavara itself is closed to most traffic, but Upwell is a bustling center of commerce. There are 5 moons with their own complex ecologies. Arakan, Orsoro, Melos, Hallis, Groovy. It says the most prominent inhabitants, the Dreamers, are not actually native to the world. It says long ago, Barathu explorers departed the stormy skies of Bretheda, within telepathically controlled Oma. The original purpose of that journey is long lost, and the Barathus who settled on Liavara underwent a psychological and physiological departure. Those two words are back to back, and my brain was struggling to read those. Then we have Bretheda. Is that what this place is called? The largest planet of the Pact Worlds is a turbulent gas giant ringed with abundant moons. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The sky seas of this world churn and roil in bands encircling the world, forming perpetual storms that can be seen from across the system and last for centuries, if not millennia. That's cool. Despite this, Bretheda and its... I keep wanting to say Bethesda. Bretheda and its moons have spawned a stunning number and variety of life forms, linking to its moniker as the Cradle. The world holds a sizable share of power and influence in the Pact Worlds, with the Barathus' dominance of the biotech industry and their administration of nearby Liavara, the Callow's leadership in a system-wide art and fashion, and the incredible intellectual ability of Daikon's Urogs, plus the sheer number of sentient species who call Bretheda home. So it's a gas. I mean, the idea of millennia lasting storms, like centuries to millennia, so 600, 300 to 1,000 years long. That's really amazing. It has no terrain though. Okay. The bulk of the inhabitants reside within the lesser dense upper layers of the atmosphere. The most prominent residents are Barathus, soaring translucent beings akin to a hybrid between a blimp and a jellyfish. Huh. So everything is built around these artificial sediments in the skies. It says there's also native cloud creatures who live in the sky seas. But then there's all these moons. On Kalamohoi, aquatic Kalor, the dominant race, then the notorious death moons of Bretheda hold populations beyond merely the prison camps. Ooh. On Veros, fire elementals and red dragons travel the volcanic landscape. There's also a number of free captains and beyond. Okay. Oh, wow. So this is a much better representation of what I was reading. That makes a lot more sense now that I read it. So living on those moons and stuff and stations. Okay. Apostae is a planetoid with few natural resources and no atmosphere, with a hollow center filled with thousands of tunnels, caverns, and chambers. Clearly artificial in nature, many of which are filled with advanced technology unlike that of any race known to the Pact Worlds, and even before the time of the gap it was a mystery, believed to be an artificial world that came to the solar system from the vast gulf of space beyond. When the gap ended, numerous drow houses already resided on Apostae in the city of Night Ark and smaller settlements just underneath the surface, dealing in technological treasures. However, even despite the fact only a small fraction of the inner world has been explored, and even now, centuries later, much of it is inaccessible. So it's not a true planet with no tectonic plates, no core of magma, no oceans, and no volcanoes. And it says its surface changes only when struck by a meteor. Or torn apart by war games and weapon tests for the various drow houses. So the drow are very warlike. Apostae is home to multiple races that trace their origin back to Lost Golarion, most notably drow, half-orcs, orcs, mongrel men, and troglodytes. None of these races are native here, and records suggest that a native race called the Ili once resided in the planet's interior, but the drow houses have found no sign that they still exist. The surface is airless and unforgiving. But within the planetoid, explorers have been known for. Okay, so everything is from inside. So how did the drow get here? I want to know how the drow arrived. I'm scanning through here, and if I don't see an answer to this yet. If someone has an answer, how did the drow get here? Like, when did they arrive? It says Night Ark is the largest and most powerful city. It's sealed off. It's hundreds of towers and compounds built within the same environmental series as starships. In the center of the city lies the massive eponymous Night Ark Gate, while the great door which grants access to the ancient chambers in the planet's interior stands in the southmost quarter of the city. Aucturn is the next planet up, and it says this place is little more than a glimmer. Oh no, it says the sun is little more than a glimmer above its poisonous skies. From a distance, it defies classical. I need to reread all of that. It defies classification. Observers disagree on its appearance and diameter. To remote scanners, it sometimes appears as a gas giant. Other times, it appears little more than a lifeless rock. It's a planetary scale illusion caused by an unknown magical artifact. All right, Starfinder writers, I'm starting to get a little concerned about your guys' use of the unknown, mystical, undescribable, we don't know what caused it MacGuffin here. I mean, I'm loving everything I'm seeing in Starfinder so far. I've really been enjoying playing it and learning about it. But that MacGuffin has popped up like half a dozen times now, where it's an unknown thing. Um, I mean, just in this video alone, we've seen it like half a dozen times. That is, I hate to say it, but it's lazy. It's lazy writing to use an unknown anything. When starships approach, the unappealing truth of Aucturn is quickly revealed to them, a strange, organic, but mostly inhospitable world swathed in a poisonous atmosphere. Okay. So why is this a packed world? There's people who live here, cultists, says. Assert that their world is the waiting womb of a great old one, ready to burst upon the solar system and usher in a terrible age of darkness. Ew. Filled with bizarre mutations, and many off-worlders suffer horrid transformations after only a few days on the surface. Oh, wow. Says those with merely physical changes are fortunate because Aucturn warps the minds and drains sanity more swiftly than it alters physical matter. Most of the natural inhabitants have their own malignant purposes, and it says that the planet was once a neutral meeting ground between worshippers of the outer gods and representatives of the aberrant dominion of the black. Most of the resident creatures are monstrous and vicious. Psychic ghosts, shoggoths. The most common of Aucturn's native creatures are the Orocorans, semi-intelligent predators with mosquito-like. Oh, I don't want to know any more about this planet. No thanks. That doesn't sound fun to me at all. Who is Karsai the King? That's probably the society. Karsai the King or the midwives. Aucturn lacks local governments. What law exists is brutal and erratic based on fear or blind devotion to an evil power. Nope. Never want to go here. There's nothing here that even remotely appeals to me. At all. No thanks. Next. I think that's actually the last one, it looks like. So that's a. Why did they leave? I guess they left the worst for last. Yeah. So we're now at the end of exploring our deep dive. Although it's maybe just a surface deep dive because we didn't go into all of the different planets, but I figured that's a great series that we can do, is actually doing a deep dive into each one of the planets of the Pact Worlds, because there's quite a bit in here to dive through and sink our teeth into. So that'll be something that's coming on the pipeline later as we continue the Discovering Starfinder series. So here's the point of the video where I say, hey, hopefully you liked what you saw today, and if you're an expert on Starfinder, please let me know any information, any resources and things of the nature down below in the comments, because I want to know more. I'm learning about this world. Eventually, I will be going into Pathfinder because I did pick up that massive Humble Bundle on Pathfinder earlier this year, so I now have all of these Pathfinder resources. So at some point, I'll be doing an Exploring Pathfinder series as well, but we're still deep into the Starfinder rule set and learning more about this world and doing the actual play series. So hopefully we'll see you for those episodes as well. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon if you like all this stuff so you never miss an update. And of course, check out all the other playlists. And here's the ask that I always do. Please support if you can. All the ways mentioned in the middle of the video. Until next time, everybody, stay safe. Happy gaming.